Yes.
What happens in your home is only unique to your home. You can't start comparing your home with your neighbors because different homes are built on different backgrounds by people with very different minds. And sometimes we get confused by trying to compare ourselves with others. Uganda has got a specific history that no other country has. And we have gone through an experience that you will never find in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Congo, or anywhere else. Our experience is unique. So we are uniquely formed. We have had a unique trajectory. The Uganda we are talking about is a Uganda that was formed from different nations that were in this area and were conquered by a foreign power, and it is a foreign power that formed what we now call Uganda. That was the British. Before that, we had different nations. The Mormon, who is the chief, who was the chief of the Teso, headed a nation. This was a nation. Bugisu was a nation. Buganda was a nation. Busoga was a nation. We had different nations that were conquered by force and a new country created. So Uganda is a creation not by Ugandans, but a creation by foreigners. Secondly, since Uganda became, and once it was created, we started fighting to become ourselves again. And after nearly 70 years, we were granted independence. It took 70 years to defeat the British, and they allow us to be independent. 70 years. Since we became independent, no leader of Uganda has ever been removed by Ugandans. Since independence, every leader has been bombed out of office. Every leader, right from the first president of Uganda, who was the Kabaka of Buganda, Sir Edward Mutesa, was bombed out of his Ruviri, and he fled into exile. Obote, who was prime minister, then became president in 1967, only to be bombed out of office by Idi Amin 4 years later. Amin was bombed out of office by mainly the Tanzanians and with the help of some Ugandans, and it has gone on like that. The current leader, Mr. Museveni,
He's also most likely to be bombed. Do you want to say like that?
Well, he bombed his way into office, and we were together at that time. So I know about that bombing that brought him to office in 1986.
Yes.
And he has been in power now for nearly 40 years. So that is the history of Uganda. That whoever, since Uganda was created by force of guns. It has been maintained, whoever leads it by force of guns since it was created. That is the reality of Uganda. It is a different reality in Kenya. It is a different reality in South Africa. there are different realities. Now, what does this mean? And I want our listeners to listen carefully to understand the problem
Yes.
that we face. Because I've said that Uganda is a creation of force and it has been led by force. I was part of the force that took power in 1986. On the 26th of January that year, we read what was called a proclamation, which said that on this day, the National Resistance Army has captured the power of state of Uganda. The army issued a declaration that it had captured the power of the state of Uganda. That declaration was called Legal Notice number 1 of 1986. And that it had vested it, the power it had captured, that it had vested it in the national resistance movement. So power was captured by the army and vested in the movement. I was both part of the army and part of that movement. And that power will be held for only 4 years. And that after 4 years, the transition will be over, power will be handed to the people of Uganda. That was the arrangement. Of course, power has never gone back to the people of Uganda. And it was the failure of that transition that was promised which caused me to break with the NRM. Because actually, I was at the top of managing that transition. I was the national political commissar and the minister in the president's office. And the role of the national political commissar was to oversee the politics of the transition. Yes. Maybe let me just reach it at the role of the NPC was to manage the transition. And while NPC, I realized that that transition was not going well. That actually, rather than preparing to hand over power to the people of Uganda, I realized that power of the movement, which had been vested in the movement, was actually being grabbed by the leader of the movement. So the movement was not the one exercising power. The power that had been vested in the movement had been also grabbed by the leader of the movement, Mr. Museveni, had grabbed the power of the movement. So meetings of the movement were not happening. Only one man was making decisions. The army too was captured. The army was not functioning as it should. The army had also been captured by the leader of the army, who was also the same leader. So the movement, the army were all captured. And that's what caused me to disagree with Museveni, because I was charged with overseeing the transition that was going wrong. And when I started talking, I was instead dismissed. So I left government in 1990. When 1990 was supposed to be the end of the transition, when power was supposed to be handed over to the people. So after the 4 years, I was sacked from government. And those problems continued because one man had captured the power of the movement and of the army. And this was the reason I wrote a document in 1999 talking about how NRM had been captured. The document that caused my problems of being court-martialed. So, the problems the country experiences, including the problems that the parties you are asking about experience, come from that time of capturing the whole state, capturing all institutions of the state, including the military that had taken power. And I'm going to explain to you how that has developed since that time. It is a bank of Museveni, because he has captured all the institutions. The Uganda police is not Uganda police, it's a Museveni police. The Uganda People's Defense Forces is not a defense forces for us, it is a defense force. So all these institutions were captured. Having captured the institution, the next thing that was captured was our economy, our wealth. You remember Uganda had assets, materials, goods, wealth that we owned jointly, which included factories, which included banks, which included transport companies, Uganda Airlines, Uganda Railways, Uganda Bus Company, Uganda what. All these were owned jointly by us. Uganda hotels. Here in Soroti, there was Soroti Hotel, there was Tororo Rock Hotel, there was Mbale Ergon Hotel, the Ginger Crested Cranes, those Sheraton hotels, Nile Hotel, were all, every town had Uganda hotels, which were all our properties. Uganda Commercial Bank had a bank everywhere in Uganda. All these things were captured and taken and personalized, privatized to themselves, became personal property. They said they were selling them so that the money is used elsewhere. No Ugandan has ever been told what became of those properties once they were sold. How much came out of it? Where is it? All of it was simply privatized to the same people. The only thing that has remained contentious is land. And in the Constituent Assembly, Mr. Museveni tried a lot to give power over land to the government, that they can take over land. That was the only thing I think that the Constituent Assembly saved. They said no, land belongs to the people. Up to now, there is an effort to change that law, but it has still failed. So now land is also being grabbed by force.
All right, Doctor, let me first go
law.
for a time check, then I'll bring you back again to continue from there.
What is the time?
It's 8.
It's 8.
That's the time check.
Oh,
It's going.
well, I hope. So, let me take this point to...
Then for me, I explained major about the land and then the sale of the property. Regarding the listeners.
Because that one is,
That is what concerns touches the
that is life.
But it's good to give a background. Yeah, it makes them understand the whole situation.
So the next step is where are we?
Of course, not to poverty.
And where are we going?
The lake has been sold.
The phone has refused to charge.
That's the refused.
Maybe the note is 0.
Yeah, no, yeah, not everywhere. Everywhere is not. All over the country.
Maybe it intend to be in Karamoja.
We have
But earlier on, I'd already asked him that the differences in political parties, including NRM, they have their force. There is a force behind the FDC. Initially was a very strong party in this country. Now we are seeing two FDCs, the one that sits in the headquarters of Najana Kumbi and the other one that sits in the Katonga roadside, the functions, all these things. But we are saying, where are these things leading us in this country? Are we creating room for NRM to overpower us, the citizens, including political parties? The opposition political parties, they are fighting each other. Yes, let me bring back Doctor. He was raising a very important point there. He was saying this country needs something different.
Yeah, so, John, what I was explaining, and it's important that our listeners understand where all this comes from. I told you that it starts with the use of force to capture power, the use of power to capture wealth, to capture the economy, and I've told you that everything in our economy is now captured, whether those which belonged to all of us together were sold and privatized to themselves. I've told you that even now lakes, you find the lake is privatized. People who were depending on the lake to fish and get and look after themselves cannot. People have been tortured and killed over the lakes that they depended on for their livelihoods. Again, and I talked about the privatizing lakes a long time ago. They even wanted to take me to court. That time I was in Amolata talking about what was happening to the people of Amolata over their lake, this same lake of Choga. So the NRM, Mr. Museveni, who captured the NRM, who captured all institutions, captured the economy, and has been imposing high taxes to the people of Uganda, extracting whatever you earn. Whatever you get, he siphons it through taxes and it's taken away. The result of all that is what we are seeing today and dealing with. First of all, massive poverty all over the country. In other words, poverty has been turned into a weapon. People are controlled by poverty, which has been constructed deliberately. Once you are poor and you are on the wall, they give you 1,000, you clap and do what the one who has given you wants you to do. So, that was the first phase of state capture. When we came out and protested and fought, started a strong fight in the elections from 2001, then another tool was brought in, or two tools were released. First of all, money. Commercialize politics. Buy people to do what you want, because they have already been made poor. So money started being powered in elections. Secondly, militarize the elections. So when there is an election, it's like there is an outbreak of war. You find armored vehicles, tanks, mambas, moving all over the place, deployment of soldiers, the military, the police, so that people fear and do what they want. And I have already talked about the institutions that manage elections. The Electoral Commission, which is supposed to control all these things, is not the Uganda Electoral Commission, it's M7 Electoral Commission. So, I personally have participated in 4 elections, and that's why whenever I'm in Teso, I feel so privileged, because when I moved out of the movement and started opposing it, the people our people in Western Uganda had not seen what I was saying. They did not see it. The people in Buganda were not seeing it, because Museveni was frightening them, saying, you know, we liberated you from these people of North. We liberated you from the killers of UNLA. He was bringing photographs of scars. They will come back and finish you. So he was making himself a hero of Southern Uganda against Northern and Eastern Uganda. So when I challenged him, the warmth and support that I received most, and which I needed, because they were hounding me, was from Teso here, from Acholi, from Lango. And that's why I tell you, even now, when I am in a Teso, I sleep soundly because of the love that I have enjoyed here, the support that we enjoyed, because of what was happening in those elections. Now, I've told you we have since contested 4 times. These 4 things have multiplied many times. The commercialization of elections, the militarization, and the control of the institutions that manage elections. And these are what have resulted into what is happening in political parties now, which I am going to explain to you. Maybe my brother can translate that.
Enere nesi bonibe opono gulara iboro kere e banka la yaiti akor la jai ni region aje banka lo ayaita akor pono gulara iboro lu ipokate airline o Uganda kate agali osodi ayumi chori ni kat leki ubore kioga ada na gulara inete dabu bonesi bonbe eja seo ne Uganda esobete bale rai e battlefield ejiele pol ejajore ejai police ejai dobo kwanina lomu enere nesi be goit nesa seo iru ana ngono ada onese gweni nesi ano eile peso aseo nesi kapa president konye ningo sitina e pol itosomai NRM kapuni adoketa itina e pol osore commission ngoni le yaiti nesi kape commission lo o Uganda mamera lo Uganda era ingone commission a president Museveni le limonora nesi ase one kokotai esuni nesi in neda bobo nesi besidike president Museveni amumu ichito somai o ni lo Teso lo Lango lo Acholi kangunu da West Nile lo mutorami olimoni kinunu be pote ngono areso so aja inesi ama ikini tunga kui lu obuke chebe mami teseroko era singunu le joka kado sodi choli na bameroko odumuni nesi support le langir lo ibecho kina anyona no Teso Lango Acholi inet na bubonesi bichani lu ayapuga nine Uganda aina kitunga achamunu isirigini kate lu kumiti isirigini lu
capture of the state also in many ways led to capture of the media houses. First of all, the state itself owns very many media houses which are influential. UBC, Radio Uganda, Bukede, Vision Group of companies, Etop, Lumuli, Rupini, many media houses that are controlled by the state, through which they communicate information aimed at confusing the population. And of course, they have hired very many people to keep on the radios speaking for them. That's the work of the RDCs. I think from this year they have increased. I heard them saying they are going to have 3 deputies of the RDCs everywhere. And that is what they have been using. So, the political parties, to survive in this environment, they have to think very hard and act smart. Because political parties of the opposition have no money. If they have to contest, they must contest and structure their campaigns in a manner where they will have to get their whatever they get without use of money. They must fight against the terror of the regime and the propaganda and the divide and rule that the government employs. And that's why some of us, after the 2011 elections, thought we must have a different approach. And we started, and you remember after the 2011 elections, I also stepped down from the leadership of the party. I had just been elected in 2010 for my second term of the party, but I stepped down because I realized that what was needed in the country was a different approach. So I stepped down from Najana Nkumbi, and that's when Katonga actually started. Katonga started in 2012. I left the party and went to Katonga, not to do party work, no, but to now start a resistance that was not based on party activities, a resistance which would unite all people that are being terrorized and marginalized. And that's why...
Maybe before, did you go there as FDC in 2012? Did you go as FDC, or it was not on the agenda to go there as the FDC?
I went there with the FDC complete knowledge. And what I was going to do was also going to involve them. It was not to act outside what the FDC was doing. But the reason we set up Katonga was that we now start a resistance that was not partisan. And in Katonga, in fact, at that time, we created a pressure group that was called Activists for Change, A4C. And Activists for Change was the one that conducted the demonstrations that were popularly known as walk to work demonstrations.
Yes.
They were being organized from Katonga and involving all parties. It was not just FDC, they were involving all parties. In fact, the coordinator of the walk to work campaign was from DP. Matthias Mpuga was the coordinator of the walk to work. So, there was a difference in strategy adopted from 2011. From just not having or focusing only on elections, but focusing on what we call defiance or resistance against what the government was doing
Yes.
in other ways other than elections. Those of you who have been following the party work, some of our leaders in the party did not like the defiance. In fact, opposed it. And we had a big debate in FDC between defiance and what was called party structure building approach. So in other words, for us, the first division or the first disagreement, if you like, or contradiction was on the strategy for the party to use.
En nesi bation sina ija ini poitungalu etantos amenita kekiro. Eda unaseo na ajai bunesi EM from the party active. So losine sadukunu kwani eke party ngoni katonga abu siti na yenya nesi. Anuaru choki ni party kerelo Uganda. Amini kapalu eperorete ejie.
Well, thank you very much. You are mixing up many issues because I hadn't finished explaining to you what has happened within the FDC, which I think I should finish. So I first told you, and I think
you can first finish. Then
it's important.
I'm only
that,
giving that so that you have that in your mind.
Yeah,
that
it's important that people understand where all this came from. So I told you that because of the structure that the regime had created, the militarization, the commercialization, the propaganda machine they had built, the capture of the economy, the impoverishment of the population, we had come to the conclusion, some of us, that we needed to change approach, change the strategy from just elections to actually fighting outside elections, which is what is defiance. And that caused the first cleavage within the party, General Muntu arguing for maintaining the building of the party and using the party to fight, and thus advocating or insisting on using a fight outside the elections, which would also include uniting the different political formations. The important thing our listeners should understand is that contradictions or differences in parties are not only normal, they are healthy to have differences. The difference is how you manage them. So that difference between our line of defiance and General Muntu's line was managed. It never caused the division of the party. We would argue, present arguments to the delegates conference, to the organs of the party, and the party would decide. And once they decide, we go with that. So, you know, when I stepped down, the election that was held to replace my successor, General Muntu, whom I had contested with 3 times, actually won the election. And you know our elections are very transparent. They are held in front of all cameras. So General Muntu won, and Nandala Mafabi, whom he was contesting against, congratulated him and you know, accepted the loss. General Muntu then ran for 1 term, and in the election that followed, that's when our brother Amriat contested against General Muntu. And this is important that people understand the dynamics, because now there is a lot of propaganda around all this. Together around Uganda, and we came through Teso, and General Muntu has used that to say that I was the problem why he lost, that I fought him. Now, in that election, even when we came to Teso, the Teso leaders, all of them were not supporting Amuriat, the one I came with. They were not. Yes. All of them, whether it was the MPs then, there was, of course, Alaso, there was Osege, there was Okupa, there was Ariko had he been in, Ariko, everybody, Ochola, all of them were not supporting Amuriat, whom now they claim to be, some of them. So, but the important thing why we became close to Amuriat is that when he lost the election in 2016, he became very active in Katonga on the Defiance platform. In fact, he was the kingpin. He was our central person in charge of security at Katonga from 2016 until he became party president. Even after he became party president, he remained active at Katonga because he held a lot of our information. The most sensitive information we had at Katonga, he was the keeper of it. And as I have said, that is, and frankly, we thought that if we have Amuriat as party president, who was a Defiance supporter, unlike General Muntu, who had a different approach, we thought that the Defiance strategy would now gain momentum and do greater things. Because, you see, as I have told you, one of the problems indeed that all this politics has is that even at Katonga, we fight on our own, but we don't have institutional support, and we lacked institutional support. The party is an institution. When I led FDC, we did not receive money from government. But during the leadership of General Muntu, the policy of government changed, and they started giving money to parties according to the number of MPs you have. And actually, per MP, almost a party gets 100 million from an MP that you have in parliament. If you have one, you get about 100 million. If you have
5,
you get equally that. So that's why per year, for the whole year.
yes.
So the parties have money and can use that money in a manner that can help liberation. So we were indeed happy that the Defiance person was in charge of the party. And I don't see how we could then undermine the person, because some people even have been saying that I maybe want to become the party leader again. I can never become the party leader of FDC again, because our constitution actually only allows 2 terms. You cannot serve more than twice. Although I never completed any 1 term But they were 2 terms in which I served. So I can never be a party leader again. So the point is, we had contradictions, they did not lead to a divide. So what has led a divide when now Amriat is at the leadership of the party? That's where I want to go. First
NRNC boni be obu eso ogwo kole mugisha muntu osoli nesi eilanya ama Matthew nisina polo potkeso pedosi aswam kapetimu osoli dabo nesi ego muntu kole nandala mafabi oponilanye nandala mafabi opagna tekwesi aswam ineti nesi dabo nibe ajasi itimu ni yare defiance in a lockage. Also, they
complaining and eventually they moved out of the party. Those include, of course, as you know, the Honorable Alaso Sege and other people who were here. They moved out of the party, feeling that they had no justice and space for them to operate. That was a loss. It did not affect the party very much. The party remained strong, but you know, any leaf that goes off the roof, any grass that goes off the roof affects what is happening there. Now, so the problem that eventually caused this major crisis we have came because in 2018, that was 1 year after Amriat came into office, I called all the leaders of the party to inform them in advance that I will not be a candidate in 2021. And I gave them my reasons and told them that the reason I was informing them that early was that they should select a candidate for 2021 very early, since this will be a new person, so that that person can be popularized well ahead of the elections. That meeting took place at a Catholic center in Namugongo called Choto, 2018. Unfortunately, they did not go ahead to follow it up and choose who would be a candidate in 2021. So when 2020 came, these people came back to me in Kasangati and said, we don't have a candidate. We are sorry, you have to be a candidate again. And I said, no, I will not be. And again, I gave them my reasons. And this went on for some time, going and coming back to put pressure on me to become a candidate. When it was clear to them that I was not going to be a candidate, then they started now. This was now coming to mid of 2020 for the election of 2021, where the nomination actually happens in 2020. So they together, and this happened at my house, not in the party, but at my house. In a consultation, we said now the best thing is you, Amriat, you are the party leader. Since nobody was prepared in advance, you have no choice. You have to put on
Your shoes.
your boots
and move.
and go. And we all agreed. We said that even to create momentum, first move around the country with Chairman Birigwa as a primary contest, so that you campaign amongst all our people, it gives you exposure and so on. And you may have seen both Ambassador Birigwa and Amriat moving across the country. But we had already agreed that Amriat should be the candidate. But following that, they came and said, now we don't have money for elections. And indeed, I know that elections, as I've told you, it has already been constructed. You need a lot of money to conduct a campaign. They said, now, since you were a campaigner before, show us how we get money. And I told them that it is not easy to get money for a candidate that has not popularized himself yet. Because Amuriat had for all the years been campaigning only in Teso. He was not known even in Uganda. And so getting support, getting people to fund a candidate that is not well known is not easy, and I explained to them. And suggested to them that the best approach, rather than looking for money as just FDC candidate, let's look for support for opposition candidates. We unite opposition and say we want support for the opposition candidates. And especially that we fundraise together with the candidate of NUP, who was more known and we could create a joint fundraising approach. That's where the problems started. They said, I want to sell FDC to NUP. And I think that is still being talked out, that now you see Besigye is undermining us. He wants to bring NUP into this. And I said, but how will you raise money? Because we need, if you are to raise money, people give money to a candidate or to candidates. So if we create a joint force, not that one gives up candidature for the other, no, both are candidates, but they are candidates facing the military, and we can call supporters that we want liberation, support all these candidates to liberate Uganda. That is an easier sale. They completely refused, and it was a little while later that you know, these stories of money started coming. That you know, money has now come from somewhere.
What they call the dirty money.
What is now popularly known as the dirty money.
Yes.
Please understand that even, and that's the reason I don't talk about dirty money myself, because that is not the real problem. Even when money has come, it can be used for the purpose for which it was, for the liberation. So the question is not the money, but how it is applied.
Yes. All right, Doctor, before you get to that critical point, let's first check time, then we shall bounce back.
The time check on Sloga Veritas Radio. It's 9 p.m.
You also bite.
Sloga Veritas,
They are giving you opportunity.
Yes. I think there is water in
There
the
might
car.
be water.
Ha. It's people have finished it.
It's finished.
If-
We had the box.
yesterday and today, everybody comes to the car to look for water.
You know, throat was hot.
It was hot today again, beyond anything. It was very
It was
hot.
real hot. From the Agnes Akiror to the Bukedea, Lede now, Anita, to people who were leaving us and going. And there are many all over the country. And indeed it is true that being in the opposition for a long time is not an easy thing at all. And so I said, so what should we do? And they said they think we should change approach. Rather than continuing the fight as we lose people, maybe we should change approach and talk to the government as a team, as a whole group, and present our demands and negotiate. Maybe we get some, those we don't get, we wait. But we also now continue surviving. And they said even Museveni is growing old, maybe he will die, and a new situation will come. And I can say without, again, fear of any contradiction that I flatly said no. I don't think that's a good approach. I agree with everything you have said, that suffering of opposition people has increased. I agree it has taken a very long time in the struggle. But some struggles are not finished by those who started them. You know, so the people who started the independence struggle were no longer around when we got independence. But this capture of the state by Museveni is the biggest problem for Uganda. If we don't solve it, if we adjust ourselves to it, then our country is finished. We simply must fight on until it goes down. And, you know, clearly they didn't agree with me because, as I have said, later the issues of money came up. We tried to manage that within the party. We held several meetings. This is before the 2021 elections. That money was in fact to be used in that election. And that, you know, some people didn't see me campaigning in that election. The reason indeed I didn't go to campaign is not because I'm against Amuriat or what. I've told you where I came from with him. But we had now developed, because nobody consulted me about this. We tried to manage it, they were adamant. And so I considered that rather than making it an issue that could affect people that are not involved, let me just pull back. We go through the election the way we go through, whatever way we go through them, and then we try to deal with these problems afterwards. And that's what we tried to do. You know, we went through the elections and tried to resolve this thereafter. We held very many meetings. Unfortunately, they did not materialize. And let me say this. I have said that the money in itself would not be a problem. The problem is if the money achieves what the giver wants it to do. And Museveni gives money for two main reasons. First, he doesn't want all people he has captured who may be in different parties to work together. He wants each one to remain on their own. And I've told you that the challenge I got trying to unite these groups ahead of the election. So it was clear to me that it was being applied to its purpose. Because we uniting people who are all in prison. For me, I look at ourselves as all in prison. Whether you are in prison wearing blue, whether you are in prison wearing red, whether you are in prison wearing yellow. Even the yellow people are in prison with us. Some of them don't know. But we are all in the same prison. And so, for me, I think that it makes sense for all prisoners, regardless of color, to work together to fight and break out of the prison. That is a matter which they have rejected since that time. I think now, indeed, very much similar to what General Muntu was saying, that they want to build the party, build the structures. Okay, building the structures is good, but unite with the others to fight. Secondly, is to now demonize defiance. Because some people maybe think that you can go to an election and Museveni will say, you have defeated me now. And he organizes a handover party at Kololo, and Museveni comes and hands over to the winner, whether it will be Nandala or whoever, he comes and hands over. That, in my own mind, will never happen. Museveni will never announce any other person in the election he has organized. And I have told you, all power is held by him. There is no power in parliament. Let nobody tell you lies that I am going to parliament to do work for you. There is no power in parliament. You have seen soldiers enter parliament and beat up everybody in parliament. And the Speaker of Parliament, Kadaga, crying, who beat us? I did not invite anybody to come. You know? So, all power, we must fight to release the power where it is, which is with Mr. Museveni. Because some people confuse power with offices. Think if I am a mayor, I have power. You don't have power. You can only do what Museveni allows you to do. I am a councillor, I have power. No power. I'm an MP, I have no power. You have an office, not power. So, the real challenge was not with the money, but how the money was managed. And up to now, that is still the problem. Because subsequently, rather than managing it within the party structures, the National Executive Committee, which the party president chairs, stopped functioning, stopped calling it, it never met during this whole crisis. And nobody else has power to call it. What they had agreed on to do was never done. And that's why the party chairman stepped in to try and help to resolve the crisis, to call the National Council, to call the National Delegates Conference. And what happened in those matters, you all know. You saw the party chairman climbing walls when he had been detained in the party. The Constitution is very clear. Only the party chairman can call a delegates conference. Only the party chairman can call and chair the National Council. So, they have created a crisis by not allowing those organs of the party to function. And instead, started creating a new structure, holding what they call the elections without the proper procedures being undertaken, and in many ways, selective processes of getting leaders. So the other contradiction then became how to renew the leadership of the party, whether the elections were held as provided for in the Constitution. And I'm sure even here in Teso, I have been, when I was in Amuria especially, I found people there they have two leaderships. Some who were selected and some who were elected. And they are all there, you know. So that confusion, all this confusion, if there is goodwill, it can be resolved. Even now, all this confusion can be resolved. If there is goodwill, there is nothing that cannot be managed. Unfortunately, up to now, I have not seen that goodwill to resolve this. So how do we go forward? Maybe you...
NRDC, betoma 2018, okaru walijinete so NRDC lo amuriat lo to bere area mun kurenesi osone se amaiki ni kwesi be young mama losi aigo osre kwese keta kinda bobo abongoro reke in 2020 engit nesibe kwane kutoja igwo kape presidential candidate Tomaseo na Nibonit ebala nesibon be mamnga pedori alosi Tomaseo na nara libukitingo susek be fumi mambo alosi kwana jauna hii Tomaseo na ogene salmo kina muri atona chaoke power bikutodo kwani ja kapani kin anu ayangari ebupate ngaren ulos kwani jo aigo anu aseno kape president bala nesibon kwani bore polo imametisi rigeni almamjire candidate lo general noi ilosi ai tama anyu osode sa yauna ki idea na bala be mam kwani ja inu puda yugo inene eja kait bobu wine bandu bonyo mamo ni isomanaro anyu da bon baby dukuno ni e paperon kapo position pero ni isomanare mame group ngoni lo apoa obu ocham o sora bonesa maikin kwesbe bedo beri kwani lo sona seona o ni kapaina ara imam be bas kwesbe di kapaina so opot kweso yautu idea ara igene na bala bonbe kutokwani ayaun in national chairman do neri mora Uganda
is in the same problem. UPC was the first one to get into problem. NUP is now in a problem. And if you trace where all these problems come from, they come from where I started. The capture of our country by the family of Mr. Museveni. Mr. Museveni and Family Limited. That's where all these problems start. So, to get out of this, first of all, I think what the party is doing, consulting the party members on the way forward is a good thing. And it could translate into processes that lead to reconciliation maybe and a unified way forward. That is one end, which would be a happy end. It could end in the disagreements being entrenched and generating two different groups. That is another end. But whichever way that disagreement ends, let nobody deceive themselves that Uganda will have a solution to all these problems without removing the source of our trouble, the capture of our country by a family. So that's why the reason for me, the bigger reason for me why I'm moving around this, because the party leaders could have done this themselves. But the reason I move around with them is because they are refugees at Katonga. And I consider that the purpose of Katonga, of uniting all Ugandans to rid themselves of the capture of our country, to regain control over our country, is the most foremost and most urgent thing that we must look at. And this is why I am rather disappointed when I hear people talking just about the elections of 2026. Because we know that those elections organized by Museveni will announce him as the winner. The fight must start now. People must be woken up, and this message I especially direct it to the young people. Because we have done our own fights. I am nearly getting to 70, which is the year the Bible gives us. We have done our fight. But the young people who are living in a country that is not theirs must quickly organize. And we shall help them to the extent we can to free our country. And that is the most urgent and important message that I move with. It's possible to regain our country, even this year. It's not too late to regain our country this year, if we do the right thing. If not this year, at least next year. But to sleep that you are waiting for an election that is being organized by those who captured our country is to really betray the country. So the way forward is, first of all, as FDC, let's go ahead and resolve the problems internally. But whichever way you resolve them, let's unite every Ugandan, whether you have a party, whether you don't have a party, whether you were deceived and you think you are part of the government putting on yellow, it's the time to come. This is not a fight for parties. Liberation is not a fight for parties. It's a fight for everyone who is under capture. So that's why the religious leaders must be on the front line, on this front line. The government servants must be on this front line. The soldiers, whom, as I have told you, are also captured. I told you Museveni started the capture by capturing NRM and capturing NRA. So the soldiers are captured, and that's why now they are headed by his son, who will soon, maybe, according to his plan, become the commander-in-chief. So the soldiers must free themselves because they are under capture. And the most worst of course, are the policemen who are sent after us. But the policemen, there is nobody who suffers in this country, a public servant that suffers in this country like a policeman, you know. Paid very little, no, welfare situation at all, living in terrible conditions, can't educate their children, forced to beg and become corrupt, picking petty money. So all of us must join hands and free our country. It's extremely urgent. If we waste time that we are squibbling between, I don't know whether it's FDC this, FDC that, Museveni is happy and putting his leg on the other one and sipping his tea. So the less time we spend on these small quarrels, the better. And we focus on the bigger fight that must involve those who are not FDC. And we liberate our country. That's the way I think we need to go.
Inheriti nesi, beno omite esi be FDC, mamere patelo soliti, atere kini katiuri sena, na estate harapu gare kama. Konyaba lesi, bibore polo.
Money yourselves. Take power. So the solution for all these problems that are there, the Kajongs who have been terrorizing all these regions, it's not that they cannot be controlled. They are tools that are used to weaken and terrorize people. So you have to be determined, and especially the young people. Everywhere you go, I'm talking to the young people, because our own time is used. Even when the country changes, it's the young people to enjoy it. But don't be confused. These elections, I have told you, have been commercialized. Where does the opposition get money to put in elections in order to take power? In fact, when I was here, even for the by-election of Atan, I was concerned, because I was here and I got here after a lot of problems. They waylaid me in Jinja, arrested me in Jinja. We had to escape to come to get here. But in that short time I was here, I found people saying that, quietly, Alupo was supporting this camp quietly. Anita, I think, was supporting openly Aliko. But these are all, okay, they may, how we get money to fight elections, as I have said, can be creative. But the people who give support have interests. So elections, to look at elections as the way out of this capture, is something we should be careful about. And I'm not saying that we should not participate in elections, because again, some people say Besigye is against elections. No. But elections structured the way they are, if we are to get into them, we must go there with our own fighting force, which we can only build now. You want to go into the election and build the force within the election. That's why we must build the force now, start fighting now. If the election come before we have caused the change, we fight through the election. But now I have heard some people changing talk, saying, if we use defiance, people will be arrested, people may be killed, Yes, we have been in prisons many times. Some of our colleagues indeed have died, but it takes pain to get back the country.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Let's get to calls. Maybe
Now,
yeah.
Well, I think I am grateful to all the callers and the messages they gave. First, Mr. Rupert and the gentleman from Marapai, I think. We are talking about dialogues to reunite. And the gentleman from Marapai was asking where we were not to start dialogue or to unite the party, and we are now starting now. He must not have listened to me, the one of Marapai, because I told you that we did what we could from the time before the last election. We held meetings before the last election. We held very many meetings after the elections. We did not succeed. And we can talk about why we did not succeed, but the point is that every effort was undertaken, but we did not succeed. I am not saying that no new effort can be made and may succeed. It has been raised that more effort should be done, and that's the point of Oluport. He says that more dialogue should be engaged. And I think even the Molodio,
yes.
Molodio also was keen on dialogue. And the party, I'm sure, will launch a process that can exhaust that channel. Because that's the reason we are moving around, getting ideas from the party owners who are the members of the party.
All right.
So everything should be done to ensure that, any possibility of maintaining the party is done. And I have heard people, talking about how they have suffered for the party. I don't know whether you also value my own suffering for the party. I don't know how many times I have been in prison, I have been shot, I have been tried on capital offenses, I have gone to exile for 4 years. Living in exile is not easy. So there is no, if you talk about suffering for the party, I think I would be the last person to want to see FDC destroyed. But, if the party was formed for a particular objective, liberation, if the party fails to liberate us, then we still must have liberation. And that is why You know, the main point here is FDC was not divided for 17 years. It was not divided. It was one FDC and strong FDC. But even then, I have told you that we set up Katonga to unite our effort with the effort of all other Ugandans. So FDC by itself is not the medicine for liberation of Uganda. We must unite with everyone, whether political or not political, to liberate the country.
All right, Dr.
And so, while this squabble is going on, it should not stop the process that is needed to liberate the country. And that's why we are moving.
All right, Doctor, it's already 10.
Lastly, John,
Yes.
there was a gentleman who talked quite obviously like an NRM fellow, the one who was talking about Paul was popular, he popularized me. If Paul popularized me, I am grateful that he popularized me. But this is not about me. This is about Uganda. Whether I am popular or not popular, what we want is a free Uganda. And we should not look at individuals. Tomorrow I may be dead, or even tonight. So this is not about me at all. It's not about power at all. And of course, if he was popular, you know, he was our presidential candidate, you know, and that popularity indeed had an opportunity to be tested. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you very, very much for listening to us. The struggle to free Uganda is a tough one, and we must not give up. We must remain strong. There will be confusing agents who are propaganda coming all over the place. We must defeat the propaganda. We must defeat those who invest in dividing and causing us to conflict. We must defeat their money, which they have captured in the whole country and used to cause problems amongst us. We must defeat fear and take back our country. For me, I can promise you that as long as I breathe, I will remain on the front line, whether alone or whether with others, until our country is free. I thank you, and God bless you. God bless Uganda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wanted, lastly, as we wind up, from Honorable Proskovia.
So you are not.
Yes, I'm grateful. I've listened in, and that's what brought me to Teso. I have been listening to the entire country, and I'm continuing to listen to Ugandans. And I want to thank the people of Teso for talking to us, for sharing your views. As I promised in the meeting, I will be back on 4th July. Because the people of Teso want to mediate, want dialogue. They want to be on the forefront of reconciliation, and I have allowed them to do so on behalf of all of us. And I did that from a privileged point of view as a founder member of the party. And so on 4th, we have a date, me and Teso. I'll be back to give us the solution you have discussed with us, and which you will continue to discuss. But I want to tell you that we want to remain one Uganda and one people.
All right, thank you.
God bless you. And I want to thank the church. The church should be spearheading this. This is the mission that brought Jesus. Shalom.
Enere nesi bebonguni nesi angon. On la pangon